Yeah, no planning. Where's Joe? How are we gonna have a planning and zoning update without Joe? Let's all call this meeting to order and stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Hassler.
Here.
Alderman Smith.
Here.
Alderman Mooney.
Here.
Alderman Donovan. Alderman Jokers.
Here.
Alderman Jones.
Here.
Alderman Stupi.
Here.
Alderman Prince.
Here.
Alderman Rozika.
Here.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Very good. Like approval of the agenda?
Approval. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, very good. Takes us down to the city administrator's report. You're up, Marty.
Well, it's a little longer report than normal because I've had 3 weeks to do stuff. But I'll try and go through it quickly. I attended the levy district meeting, and well, that may be noteworthy in itself. There's been a lot of talk lately about what happened when we got the amount of rain that we got over the weekend, and people saying that they're not turning the pumps on, and that's why it's flooding. The gates were never closed, so the Mississippi River hadn't risen to the level that they would close the gates, and the water was running through the creeks at a rate that was faster than any pump could ever pump, and so none of the problems we had anything to do with the levee district or the levee pumps, because the gates were open and the water was flowing to the extent that it could through the creeks. So I just want to clarify that. We had the meeting of the, as Mark has reported on it, on the Downtown TIF Commission. I frankly was pleased with the way it went. I think it was much more cooperative, and the agreement that they came to is kind of interesting. The only people that don't like it are Sue and the county, because it's going to require more record keeping. But it turns out that it's perfectly okay to, the attorney used the word sequester, take buildings or blocks if you wanted to, and have them kind of exist independent of the overall TIF and stand on their own merits. And by doing that, they come out of the TIF and the base gets lowered. So if you take out the properties that have been taken off tax rolls and you allow the Lucent building to be kind of sequestered, we make the base. And we do it without taking away from the owner of the Lucent building the opportunity to have a client who would apply for a TIF, because you can still apply for a TIF. It's the same conditions will apply. The only difference is you only have to meet your base, not both the overall district bases. And so when you think about it, I couldn't find a downside to that, because now the projects that are in the TIF that do have to rely on the overall base will be able to function, and the ones that are segregated out will either rise or fall on their own merits. But from the city's point of view, it's a neutral, a revenue neutral event. So that's the direction they plan to go, and ultimately they have to make the recommendation to you, and that will happen. The next meeting is next month, because the attorneys have to get together, and I have to contact some property owners, and I've done that, and it seems to be progressing.
What about for individual property owners? Can they request to be sequestered from, and then are we going to have a situation where we've got everybody demanding their own special TIF treatment?
It's possible, but unlikely.
Okay.
Of the 300 properties in the TIF boundary, most of them are single-family residential homes, which are not, because there's no sales tax, they're really not well suited to benefit from the TIF anyway. So you're really talking about properties that have a commercial activity that will generate sales tax have a reasonable expectation that they can recapture some of their investment. I met with an interested developer on Progress Parkway property. We will have a closed session after this meeting to discuss real estate, and he plans to be here. We're way ahead on our part on the water tower after relocating it a couple of times because trying to get it to work on the property. The road was put in, the base was excavated. I don't know if anybody's been up there, but it's a big hole. And we're just waiting for the fabricator to make progress on the tank. Another thing I'd like to say for the record, you're all aware, obviously, of the signing ceremony that occurred. I've heard comments about the city shouldn't be spending money on the setting up a national park when we have other issues that we need to address. We aren't spending money to set up a national park. We've had some just kind of incidental cost in helping coordinate meetings and things, but as far as the city spending money that we could otherwise fix potholes, but that's not happening. It's just not. It's not costing the city. It'll only benefit the city, in my opinion. I went to the CMO Transportation Advisory Committee meeting today. You know, every 2 years there's a funding cycle for projects that are non-vehicular traffic oriented. It's called the Transportation Alternative Grants. This is the cycle. This is between now and November. Sidewalks, pedestrian bridges, those kinds of things. One of the things that I thought about, and I'd love to receive input from the board as to projects that you think would be suitable for this. The funding is from $100,000 to $400,000. It's 80-20, so the city has to match it up 20%. It's difficult to get from downtown to the proposed national park site. Larry Marlar used to talk about that all the time, that there's no good pedestrian access on St. Mary's. So one possible project would be to apply for a grant to put in a sidewalk out to the historic structures on St. Mary's. Last year we talked about a pedestrian bridge over the creek, which was not particularly well received, apparently. But it's that kind of thing. The North Main Street Trail was one of those projects. Safe Routes to School is one of those projects. So those are the kinds of things we can do. So I don't know that I need any information tonight, but I'd like for you to think about it and give me a call if there are projects that you think would be worthy to consider along those lines. I intend to submit a grant, and we can submit more than one.
What was the amounts from 100 to
400 to 800. The park board has some folks on it. They're putting a lot more energy into the park board than we have seen historically. And one of the things they want to do is organize a not-for-profit organization that's Friends of St. Genevieve Parks. It's difficult for the city to receive money. Somebody says, I want to give money and have you spend it for the park. Well, you receive money, it goes in the general fund, and then we trust then if somebody gives it to us for that purpose that it gets budgeted for that purpose. But there's no guarantees in life. With this, they'd have a not-for-profit organization that could solicit and receive donations for improvements to the park, and they would make whatever improvements the board of that organization chooses to make. Mark has agreed to help them organize it at no cost to the city. So he's submitted, prepared the documents that they need to submit, and they're going to pursue that. I met with Jason Wilson of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Division. They were participants in the planting project that we had on the city side of the levee. Fish and Wildlife operates the Upper Mississippi River Wildlife Habitat Project. And what they're trying to do is to restore wildlife habitat that's been lost because of the levee systems that have been created, narrowing the channels of the Mississippi River and the dikes that the Corps puts in to maintain the channel. They're kind of losing habitat, losing wetlands, and they're going about wanting to recapture them. They want to work with the city of St. Genevieve. They're going to work with the city of St. Genevieve under any circumstances. He said, but if we can get title to property, we can spend money in the city of St. Genevieve. And so without owning the property, they're prohibited from actually making capital investments. So the property in question is between the levee and the river, and it's owned by the Joint Levee Commission, titled to the Joint Levee Commission. Joint Levee Commission was put together back when the levee was being built. It was the combined efforts of Levee District 2, Levee District 3, and the city. The Corps of Engineers required that there be this Joint Levee Commission because those three entities would be involved in the land acquisition. It was done. Levee District 2 was paid off according to the agreement. There was a payout for them at the end. So they're no longer part of the Joint Levee Commission. It's just the city and Levee District 3. I spoke to Levee District 3 about this at their meeting. They were supportive. They appointed 2 members to sit on the revised Joint Levee Commission. The mayor gets under the Joint Levee Commission agreement, gets to appoint members, and has to serve on it. At a minimum, we can get them to deed over the property they own to the city, so we can do with it what we want to, or to the levee district. The levee district has to own the footprint of the levee. They have to own the ponding area. They have to preserve a tree berm. So there are all these kind of details we've got to work out. But everybody's amenable, and I think we can work them all out. So I am pursuing that. Obviously, any formal agreement we reach with them will be something you will have to review and approve. We received a check for $2,365 because our employees have not made significant workman comp claims in the year, and the Missouri Public Risk is a consortium. It's not an insurance company. We're all members, and if you do well, they give you money back. So we got back 2% of our premiums this year for being safe. Finally, well, not finally. I've been working with the engineer on alignments for the Chadwell Lane improvements. The best alignment required moving the roads to the north, and then that would require taking some property from the owner of the corner there, the northeast corner of the intersection. I don't know him. It never works well for the city administrator to go knock on the door and say, please give me your land. So I called around asking for people who knew the owner. We ended up, Jamie Inman has a relationship with him. She agreed to be our intermediary. She met with him. He is agreeable. So the Missouri Natural Gas and the investment group who has the storage units on the other corner will have to give us a little property and some temporary working easement, but I think we're on the way. And finally, the heavy rain we had did do some water damage in basements. We received a couple of calls, not very many. But in addition to that, it did some damage at the treatment plant, and Steve's going to come up here and explain that to you.
Evening, everyone. All right. Down at the wastewater treatment plant, we have a UV system. It's an ultraviolet system that disinfects the water before it hits the creek. That treatment facility is located between the treatment plant and the creek, down about halfway down the hill to the creek. When the creek overflowed, flash flooded, it flooded the UV pit. This pit's about 15 feet down in the ground. It's below creek level. Normally it's protected by concrete walls, but it was just too much for it that day. From that, there are 20 sets of bulbs in there that have 20 control modules that power them. About half of those controllers got water inside the boxes and have caused some kind of damage that will prevent them from working. We spent most of the week getting that system back up and running the best we can, and now we're going to have to call in the manufacturer to assess the rest of the damage and give us a cost.
And then we'll pursue an insurance claim
Yes.
to see if their insurance will cover all or any portion of it.
Right now our system's running about 50%, and at 50% it still will produce acceptable levels according to the permit with DNR, but anything less than that I'd start questioning.
I heard of a couple of places where we had the basement up, and, you know, this is an extreme event. You know, this is not something that's going to happen, I realize, often. But do we know, like over by the brewery area, and, well, I guess just out here, am I pointing the right way? Market?
District?
Market and, yeah, down that way? Is that just, I mean, is there the possibility that there's like a crack like we had up at Point Base somewhere, or?
No, I wouldn't say that. We've investigated Market Street, we've cameraed it, we performed smoke testing. The only deficiencies we found on that line were in the customer's laterals, in the private lines.
Okay, and the customers are all aware that?
Everybody's aware, nobody's done anything. So.
And then over by the brewery?
I never received a call.
I'm talking about on, what's the?
3rd Street,
Third?
3rd and
There was a couple, the brewery, the building itself had water up coming in through the sewer drain, I know.
Yeah, never received a call on it, so.
I would encourage folks, if they're having trouble, to make a call to someone who could do something about it, rather than perhaps just complaining on Facebook about it.
What we can't do is reimburse them for their cleanup expenses.
Right. But we can't know to check to see if there's a problem unless they're informing us by some means other than complaining on Facebook.
Some of the homes in the area that you did mention are within the bounds of the 100-year floodplain. So when you have a rain like that, you're pretty much going to get water. I mean, because they're lower than the creek level. Now, should it infiltrate and force sewage back up to their floor drains? That's another issue. That's what we should address.
Any
other
questions?
Thank you, Steve.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
You have Kenny's report. Don't see him here tonight.
He's working.
He's working tonight, that's what I figured. So, any questions about Kenny's report? Maybe Mark can handle?
There's an attachment. We had some conversation about the jour de fête properties and the accessibility of it during the jour de fête. So Kenny's kind of responded to what he read in the papers. That's in that attached report.
It's a good response. Really
I think
good.
the plan here will be, between now and the next jour de fête, is to have the fire chief and me and whoever wants to be part of the process sit down with the jour de fête folks and work out a kind of a schedule or an arrangement that meets the fire chief's concerns and also meets their needs, so we don't just run over it, you know. And the years that I had been here, I've always found those people to be most cooperative.
David? Come to the stand.
Good evening. You got the report there. The Heritage Commission happily met kind of off cycle, I guess, last week. We had a couple properties that were looking to begin work quicker. Actually had started a little ahead of time. So we got them approved. In fact, one of them came in and got their building permit today and is on their way. All good work, just needed to go through the channels in the right order. No Heritage Commission meeting next week. There's nothing else to review at this time.
What about planning and zoning?
Let me see. Nothing new to report there.
Except you have a BOA meeting coming up.
We do have a Board of Adjustment meeting. It'll be in the paper next week, scheduled for October 2nd, I believe. It's just a variance application for an accessory building setback. You can see there the information on the permits, meetings, got some training I'll be attending for floodplain management. Down at the bottom, of course, is the property maintenance focus information. I did print off a few examples. A lot of you probably saw the pictures, but a lot of this is just a gutter, some junk, or some soft fascia. These are 3 examples of properties that responded really well, responded quickly. There's a couple of houses there, and one's just a mobile home that fixed what needed to be fixed. So there's some good stuff happening there. Quite a few have given plans. A lot of that work can't be done just at the snap of a finger, but they have given plans to get it done. So it seems to be going well. Most of the properties have either contacted me or done the work, or we've talked personally. So just a few out there that might require extra follow-up.
So I received a phone call from the sister of the owner of the house we declared a public nuisance, and we mitigated the nuisance. And I thought, oh no, here it goes. She was a totally pleasant woman who was abjectly apologetic for the performance of her sister and her unwillingness, and was, I mean, we had like a 20-minute conversation, and you know, she just wanted you to know, wanted me to know that the siblings their hands are tied, and they totally regret what's happened with that building in the city. So now you know.
Don't have to know how we can get a hold of the system.
She did not. And she said, I think she lives somewhere in the Pacific. Yeah, we knew that. And I think she used to work at General Motors, and I don't think she works there anymore. And I said, well, we knew she used to work there, so no, she didn't. So she won't return her phone calls. She does have her number, though. And she said, is she paying the taxes? I go, yeah, she's paying the taxes.
The abatement work done down there was by Chad Diamond on the vegetation and junk, and Tom Moody on the lead abatement and the painting, and both did good jobs. So,
And the total cost was
Total-
$1,000 on the painting and
$1,000 on the painting, and then I think it went to $650 on the junk and vegetation. So overall, pretty good deal.
under $2,000.
Under $2,000 for all that work. Tom also patched the holes, did a little bit of work on some wood, so he did quite a bit for $1,000.
A special tax lien. Not that we expect to recover it, but that's the process.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary?
Good evening. You guys think you have my report in front of you, but I gave you I sent Pam the wrong month. It's the same one you got last month. So what we did, we got the soccer fields ready to go, painted a couple times already. We did some patchwork on Scott Street, Rozier Street, and Jefferson. The wayfinding signs are up and done, with the exception of 3 they didn't have. Continued painting lines. We did clean up after a flash flood. Did
Good
the
job with that.
usual mowing and weed eating. We replaced a light pole on Merchant Street. Worked on some equipment, the sweeper, and we had a little issue with, and we corrected some vandalism at Valley Spring Park. And mowed and weed eated again.
So, last flood. In your response to it, did we do anything, have to do anything extraordinary, or was it pretty much what we always do?
Typical. Just a little bit more mud than sometimes.
Same barricades had to go up, the same?
Yep. Just like clockwork. And I was really impressed with my crew. Most of them, it was the first time they'd been through it, and then went excellent.
You're a young man from Chester, got a valuable lesson.
Yes, he did.
You don't drive through water, do you, John?
Well, they're not familiar like we are, but we still got people in town here that drive through it. So.
Yeah.
Has there been any thought, like at midnight there, the night before, putting up the barricade, knowing that there was a bunch of rain coming?
No, they'll drive around them. If you're not sitting there, they'll drive around them. I mean, there's an impassable high water sign there. And it was only a foot and a half deep when he drove through there. You know, it wasn't as bad as the pictures you see around on Facebook of that. That was at the worst point. You know, he got out and walked out of the car.
Was there how much water down at the Lynn disposal place? Was that, it looked to me like there was probably a foot or 2 down there.
Yeah.
'Cause I went down there later in the day and it was pretty muddy down there.
Which is what that's designed to do when it can't get out to the river, you know, quick enough it backs up in that bowl down there.
Any other questions? Thank you, Gary.
Gary? Sure, Joe.
Any committee reports? Brings us to public comments. Carl, you here you with a public comment?
Later on.
Well, now's the time.
Right.
Well, I have to know what you're gonna do on the board. I can't,
Oh, you have the agenda?
yeah, but don't tell me what you're gonna do and how you're gonna try to do it.
Well, we're gonna just go through the agenda like we always do, so.
Okay, I won't talk tonight.
Okay.
I'll get into it in the meeting.
Okay, yeah, you can do it next time.
I wanna say one thing.
We'll come to the podium.
Oh, boy. You gonna pick me up if
All
I
right,
fall?
if you fall down, I'll have Joel Prince pick you up.
I just wanna say one thing.
Go ahead.
You know when the highest water was on a flash flood on the north end? 1957,
Really?
Easter Sunday. It washed cars over the highway. All the water came from Zell. It touched the bottom of the Main Street bridge. But there wasn't as much water on the north end as it was then at that time. That's all I want to tell about that. You can look it up if you don't believe me.
I believe you. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Takes us to the consent agenda. On the, hold on, let me get there.
For the number 3 of the consent agenda, there was a correction made to that.
Yes, that's in the, Pam corrected it, and The paper I gotta sign's got his bright name on it, Bryant.
So do we need to declare that before we approve the consent agenda, or?
We had him Bryant down, it's Bryant, not Brian.
I will add that in my minutes that it was amended, that resolution was amended, and why.
So with that correction, I approve the consent agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good. Takes us to old business. Bill number 4239, an ordinance of the City of St. Genevieve, Missouri, authorizing a no parking restriction on the north side of Point Base Drive, 325 feet west of the intersection of Point Base Drive and Roser Street, State Highway M.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a roll call vote.
Alderman Smith?
Yes.
Alderman Mooney?
Yes.
Alderman Jokers?
Yes.
Alderman Jones?
Yes.
Alderman Stupi?
Yes.
Alderman Prince?
Yes.
Alderman Rozika?
Yes.
7 yes, 0 no's, 1 absent. Bill number 4239 now becomes ordinance 4172.
Thank you very much. Takes us to new business. First reading of Bill number 4241, an ordinance approving the budget for the City of St. Genevieve for fiscal year 2019.
I have a question. Sometime back, we had developed kind of a proactive plan for fire truck replacement. Is that plan still, are we still following through with that? How is that reflected? Is that?
That line item went from 20,000 last year to 40,000 this year.
Okay, and it's just, I just wanted for my own personal satisfaction to make sure that I see that in here, because I like the proactiveness of that instead of being reactive.
14. Points.
Awesome, thank you.
Still waiting on a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay. Motion carries. Takes us to other business. One thing I want to talk about, there's been some discussion, and it's something I think we need to clear up and do. One of them is it's got to do with residency. You know, I know Martin is required to be in the ordinance. The city administrator is required to be a resident of the city. Another one, our judge, is required to be a resident of the city. And I would like to, as we go forward here, I think what that does is, I know it handicaps us somewhat. You know, and I get that as and understand the residency rule, but I was just thinking if when something happens to Martin, we're going to be looking, or a judge, if he decides to move out of the city, we're restricted to who can have that job. And I don't see any reason why, if a new city administrator wanted to live out at the golf course or somewhere else in this county, he couldn't be in the city. I just think with today's technology, I mean, I run a business from here in St. Louis, and everybody's available with emails, and I just think that's something that we're sort of crippling ourselves.
I don't agree.
I see perhaps for the judge, because sometimes it's nice to have a judge that's free from local influence. However, for the city administrator, I'd like somebody that has a vested interest
Exactly.
in themselves in the city.
I agree.
Isn't our police chief also required?
No, I don't think so.
Yes.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
sorry, I missed the point.
Yeah. Well, it's just something to think about. I think what's going to happen down the line is your candidate pool is going to be very small. You know, and
No,
I really
you can still hire from outside, they just have to move into if they want the job, they have to fulfill the requirements of the job, and one of them is to live here. We're not limited to hiring just people that live here. We can hire from anywhere. So our candidate field's gonna be there no matter what. Whether or not they want the position and wanna move here is the second thing.
Okay.
And I would rather have somebody in that position that wants to live here.
Okay, well, I just threw it out there, it's up to
Now,
you guys.
with that said, with the judge, we had talked about removing the residency requirement and removing it as an elected position.
Right.
Making it an appointed position. I do support that and would like to move forward with that, so that, I mean, our current judge's house is for sale, and we could be left without a judge here shortly if we don't act on that.
If he wants to move out of the city, yeah, you know, so. He's up for, I think, re-election in
Correct.
April.
But before we spend money on another election,
Yeah,
I think we need to take action on that and remove that from being an elected position.
How common is that for it to be appointed versus elected?
It's much more common to be appointed. We represent one city that has it elected, and I don't know how long that's gonna stay either, because you only have, especially because they're elected, they have to live here. And I think you have, I was just looking it up the other day, I think you may have 4 attorneys who are residents in the city, maybe 5, including your current judge. And so it really does limit your ability to have an experienced judge candidate.
They don't have to be an attorney though, do they?
I don't know, I didn't see your ordinance, whether your ordinance requires it or not.
Does the state statute require it? There was a change in the law
No,
at one point.
The problem with having what's called a lay judge is that the lay judges are disqualified from hearing certain cases, DWIs and that type of thing. So they're from a legal perspective, I want to step into a policy arena, but it really is a problem having a lay judge because of what they're limited in doing. And there are people that I know that are not lawyers that are brilliant people and be great judges, but procedurally it's difficult. And just because you be a good judge of character doesn't mean you necessarily know the rules of evidence. And so that becomes a problem. It's certainly, I'm not going to get into the city administrator, and that's a good policy thing, and that varies from town to town. But the trend is to move away from elected judges.
Our city code says that he shall be a licensed attorney qualified to practice law within the state.
Yeah, so if the ordinance, I hadn't looked at the ordinance, so if the ordinance says they have to be an attorney, they have to be an attorney.
When was that, Joe?
That is in section 130.
When was that?
Huh?
When was that? Because before Ms. Grimminger was city judge.
Right, and they did away with that, it looks like, in 1985, according to this.
Good while, I remember that. I think
It's had a vague recollection about.
She was judge
in the
It should
law
have been since then.
required.
She was the judge when I was here in
Yeah.
2000, the first
Population
Right.
thing.
They didn't announce or
And
update
they
the
allowed
date on
city
this.
judges to continue to serve. So
What kind of process is there, Mark?
Oh, you just have to pass an ordinance. You just have to change your ordinance to allow for appointment.
So we could do that pretty quickly.
Yeah, I can draft it for your next meeting. It's a simple change.
Okay.
And if you're gonna do it, if his term is up in,
April.
with April, you do it now. That way you don't have an election, and then he doesn't have to worry about, getting a house in town if it was a concern of his, and if he resigns, then you have a whole lot more applicants that will be willing to drive here to be a judge.
And do we have to set a term, he's appointed for 1 year, 2 years, 5
The
years?
state statute sets it as 2 years,
2 years.
usually. I mean, I assume that he's elected every 2 years.
2 years, yeah.
So that's the term. And so then the appointment, and then it comes up for renewal. So it comes up for renewal on your agenda every 2 years, and then just reappoint him, or don't reappoint him at that point.
That sounds good.
Well, it would be the favor of the board to move forward to that. It makes good sense, for the future of our court.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, we'll move forward with that. Bring it to the board. Any other communication? Well, I need a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Second.
To discuss
To discuss.
real
Discuss
estate.
Real estate,
Just real estate?
yes. We need to have a roll call vote to do that.
Alderman Mooney?
Yes.
Alderman Donovan? I'm sorry, Alderman Jokers?
Yes.
Alderman Jones?
Yes.
Alderman Stupi?
Yes.
Alderman Prince?
Yes.
Alderman Rozika?
Yes.
Motion carries.
No, it's my pleasure. Please make room for you.
Susan was here when I was here.
Take care.
Yeah, they changed that.